My wife kept blaming me for our problems, so I moved out, got a better life, and left her to face the consequences. The clock on my dashboard read 11:42 p.m. when I finally pulled into our apartment complex. My shoulders ached from hunching over a desk for 8 hours at my day job, followed by another 6 hours bartending. As I finished the engine of my 12-year-old Honda, the silence felt like a momentary gift. I sat there, eyes closed, savoring the last few seconds of peace before walking into what had become a battlefield disguised as a home. I knew what waited for me inside. The same thing that had greeted me nearly every night for the past 2 years. Madison's disappointment. "You're late again, Nathan." Her voice cut through the darkness as I quietly closed our apartment door behind me. She was sitting on the couch, the blue light of her laptop illuminating her face in the otherwise dark living room. "I told you I was working a double at Rick's tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "We talked about it yesterday." Madison sighed dramatically. "We're going to be late on rent again. Did you know that? The landlord emailed me a warning today." I felt that familiar sinking feeling in my stomach. "I get paid on Friday. We'll be fine." "Fine? Nothing about this situation is fine, Nathan." She slammed her laptop shut. "If you had taken that management position last year instead of playing it safe, maybe we wouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck." I didn't remind her that I'd been turned down for that promotion, not that I'd refused it. Madison had a way of rewriting history to fit whatever narrative made me the villain of the moment. "I'm trying, Mads," I said, using the nickname from when we first started dating 5 years ago, before the accusations became daily currency. "Trying isn't enough when our credit score keeps dropping. Did you see we got declined for that travel card? The one I needed for my business trips when I land this remote job? The remote job. Always the remote job that was perpetually just around the corner." Madison had been aggressively job hunting for nearly 18 months now. Meanwhile, I was working myself into the ground, accounting by day, bartending by night just to keep up with our mounting bills. "I'm sorry about the card," I offered, though I wasn't surprised. Our finances had been a mess for months. "Maybe we can try for a different one with lower requirements." "Maybe if you hadn't missed that payment in March." "I didn't miss it," I interrupted, a flicker of defensiveness breaking through my exhaustion. "The payment went through late because the bank was updating their system. Remember? I showed you the confirmation email." Madison waved her hand dismissively. "Whatever. The point is, we're drowning here, and it feels like I'm the only one who cares." The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. I hadn't had a full day off in 3 months. My hands were calloused from mixing drinks, my eyes strained from squinting at spreadsheets. Meanwhile, Madison always seemed to have time for coffee dates with friends and online shopping sprees I couldn't afford. But as I looked at her, beautiful even when angry, with her dark hair falling in waves around her face, I wondered if maybe she was right. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough, wasn't smart enough with our money, wasn't ambitious enough in my career. "I'm going to shower," I said, too tired to argue. "I'll look at the budget again tomorrow." "Don't use all the hot water. The bill was high last month." Even my showers were now a luxury I apparently couldn't afford. Later, as I lay awake beside Madison's sleeping form, I stared at the ceiling and tried to pinpoint when things had changed between us. We'd met in our final year of college, both full of dreams and plans. She was going to revolutionize digital marketing. I was going to climb the corporate ladder in finance. We'd have a house by 30, kids by 32, and romantic getaways twice a year. Reality had other plans. After graduation, the recession hit. My entry-level position at a promising firm evaporated before I even started. Madison's marketing agency downsized, eliminating her position after just 6 months. We pivoted, adjusted, took what we could find. I landed an accounting job that paid the bills but offered little room for growth. Madison bounced between short-term gigs before deciding to focus on finding the perfect remote position. Somewhere along the way, our shared struggle became my failure in her eyes. The next morning, I woke to an empty bed and the sound of Madison's voice coming from the living room. I checked the time, 5:47 a.m. I'd had less than 4 hours of sleep. "I know, Mom," I heard Madison say, her voice carrying through our thin walls. "I'm trying to be supportive, but it's getting harder. Nathan just doesn't seem to have any ambition anymore." I feel like I'm carrying all the emotional weight in this relationship. I felt a deep ache in my chest. Was that how she saw me? As some ambitionless deadweight she had to carry? When I emerged from the bedroom, Madison quickly ended her call. "Morning," she said, her tone softer than last night. "There's coffee." "Thanks," I mumbled, pouring myself a cup. "I'm sorry about last night," she offered, coming up behind me and wrapping her arms around my waist. This was part of the pattern too, the morning after apology that never quite acknowledged the hurt. "I'm just stressed about money." "I know," I said, turning to face her. "We both are. Maybe we should look at your spending habits," she suggested, her voice gentle but her words sharp. "I've been tracking our expenses, and there are some areas where you could cut back." And just like that, the blame shifted back to me. My shoulders tensed. "Like what?" I asked, already knowing whatever she said would be a distortion. "Well, those lunches you buy at work for starters, and the gym membership you barely use." She pulled out her phone, ready to list my apparent financial sins. I didn't mention that I'd canceled the gym membership 3 months ago. Or that my lunches were usually just coffee to keep me awake between shifts. What would be the point? In Madison's reality, our problems always circled back to my shortcomings. As I headed out for another 12-hour workday, the weight of Madison's disappointment sat heavy on my shoulders. I caught a glimpse of myself in the elevator mirror, pale skin, dark circles under my eyes, slumped posture. I barely recognized the man staring back at me. Something had to change. I just didn't know what, or how, and I was too tired to figure it out. It was a Tuesday when I noticed it, a small detail that would unravel everything. I was paying bills during my lunch break, something I'd grown accustomed to doing in the 20 minutes between meetings. Our checking account was lower than I expected, even accounting for rent and utilities. I scrolled through the transaction history, my turkey sandwich forgotten beside my keyboard. There it was, a $700 withdrawal made 3 days ago, at an ATM across town. I frowned. I hadn't made that withdrawal. My debit card was right here in my wallet, untouched for days. We were so tight on money that I'd been bringing lunch from home and carpooling to save on gas. I texted Madison. "Did you withdraw $700 recently?" Accounts looking low. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "Oh, that. The landlord needed cash for a repair. Forgot to tell you. Sorry." It seemed plausible enough. Our building was old, and things were constantly breaking. But something about her response felt off. The landlord had always insisted on checks, claiming he needed a paper trail for tax purposes. "What repair?" I texted back. Another long pause. "Bathroom leak. They had to cut into the wall. I'll show you when you get home." When I got home that evening, there was no evidence of any repair in our bathroom. No patched drywall, no fresh paint, not even a lingering smell of sealant or caulk. Before I could confront Madison, she launched into a story about how her brother Trevor needed emergency dental work, and she'd lent him the money. "Wait," I interrupted. "What happened to the bathroom repair?" Madison's eyes widened for just a second before she recovered. "Oh, they ended up not needing to cut the wall. They snaked the drain from the access panel in the hallway. I meant to update you." She quickly changed the subject, telling me about a promising job interview she'd had that day. As she spoke enthusiastically about the company and the salary range, I nodded along, but my mind was stuck on that $700 and the conflicting stories. That night, while Madison was in the shower, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into our online banking from her laptop, which she always left open. I intended to just double-check the withdrawal details, but what I found made my blood run cold. There weren't just occasional unexplained withdrawals. There were dozens of them, stretching back nearly a year. Small enough to fly under the radar individually, $200 here, $350 there, but together, they added up to thousands of dollars. I dug deeper. There were regular Venmo payments to a username I didn't recognize, monthly transfers to an account that, when I cross-referenced the number, belonged to Trevor, and charges from stores like Nordstrom and Sephora on days Madison had claimed to be networking at coffee shops or taking online courses. My hands shook as I navigated to our credit card statements. The picture there was even worse. Maxed out limits, minimum payments, and interest accruing at alarming rates. No wonder we were drowning financially. I heard the shower turn off and quickly closed the browser tabs, my heart pounding. As Madison emerged wrapped in a towel, I forced a smile and said I was heading out for a night shift. Instead, I drove to a 24-hour diner and ordered coffee I couldn't taste. My phone lit up with a text from Madison. "Forgot to tell you, we need to pay the electric bill tomorrow. It's higher than usual." Of course it was. For the next week, I became a financial detective in my own marriage. I requested paper statements from the bank to be sent to my work address. I documented everything in a password-protected spreadsheet. I even installed a budgeting app that flagged unusual spending patterns. The truth emerged like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. Madison hadn't been looking for work at all. She'd been systematically draining our accounts to fund her brother Trevor's business venture. Some kind of tech startup that, from what I could piece together through social media, was all smoke and mirrors. But that wasn't all. There were hotel charges on days she told me she was visiting her parents. Restaurant bills for 2 at upscale places when I'd been working doubles. A weekend spa retreat she'd never mentioned. Was she having an affair? Or just living a secret life of luxury while I worked myself to exhaustion? One evening, I came home earlier than expected. Rick's had closed early due to a water main break and found Madison on the phone in our bedroom, the door half closed. "He doesn't suspect anything," she was saying, her voice low. "Nathan's too caught up in his own failures to see what's happening. Just keep the invoices vague, and I'll handle the rest." I stood frozen in the hallway, my existence reduced to those cutting words. Too caught up in his own failures. Madison laughed at something the person on the other end said. "No, I don't feel bad. He should be making more money anyway. If he were more ambitious, we wouldn't need to do this." In that moment, something crystallized inside me, hard and clear and cold. For years I'd absorbed her blame like a sponge, believing that somehow I was failing her. That if I just worked harder, earned more, did better, she would be happy. But Madison's unhappiness had nothing to do with me. It was a bottomless pit no amount of my sacrifice could fill. I retreated silently from the apartment and sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel. The person I'd pledged my life to was systematically destroying us, and worse, she was making me believe it was my fault. I thought about confronting her then and there, about storming back in and demanding answers. But a strange calm came over me. For the first time in years, I saw our relationship with absolute clarity. This wasn't a partnership, it was a con job, and I had been the perfect mark, devoted, trusting and too tired to see the signs. I started the car and drove to the bank, where I opened a new individual checking account. Tomorrow would bring reckoning, but tonight I needed to secure whatever was left of my financial future. Because one thing was now painfully clear. I rehearsed what I would say to Madison 100 times. In the shower, during my commute, while microwaving my sad lunch at work, I wanted to be calm, rational, armed with facts. This wouldn't be like our other confrontations. Me defensive and apologetic, her on the attack. This time, I had evidence. When I arrived home that evening, Madison was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled, and for a second I almost faltered. How could someone who looked at me with such warmth also be systematically betraying me? "Hey," she said, "I made pasta. There's some left if you want." I set my laptop bag down carefully. "We need to talk, Madison." Something in my tone must have alerted her. Her smile faded, replaced by a weariness I'd seen before. The look of someone preparing a defense. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting her phone down. I sat across from her in the armchair, maintaining distance. "I know about the money, Mads." "What money?" Her voice was steady, but her fingers twitched. "The withdrawals. The transfers to Trevor. The Venmo payments. The shopping trips." I kept my voice flat, factual. "I know you've been taking money from our accounts, a lot of money, and lying about it." Madison's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on indignation. "You went through my private financial information? How dare you?" Classic deflection. I'd expected it. "They're joint accounts, Madison. I have every right to know where our money is going, especially when we're struggling to pay bills." "So you're spying on me now?" Her voice rose, tears beginning to form. "I can't believe you don't trust me. After everything I've done for us." I felt the familiar pull to back down, to apologize, to soothe her distress, but the memory of her words, "Nathan's too caught up in his own failures," steeled my resolve. "What exactly have you done for us, Madison? You haven't had a job in 18 months. You've been draining our savings. You've been funding Trevor's business behind my back. And from what I overheard yesterday, you don't even feel guilty about it." Her eyes widened. "You were eavesdropping on me? I came home early and heard you on the phone. You said I was too caught up in my own failures to notice what was happening." The words still stung to repeat. "So tell me, what exactly have I failed at? Working 2 jobs to keep us afloat while you secretly steal from us." Madison's strategy shifted instantly. The tears came in full force now, her body shaking with sobs. "Trevor needed help. His business is going to take off any day now, and then he'll pay us back everything. I was going to tell you, but you've been so stressed about money, and I didn't want to add to your burden. So you decided to lie instead, to make up stories about bathroom repairs and electric bills." "I was protecting you," she cried. "No," I said firmly. "You were protecting yourself. You didn't want to face the consequences of your actions." Madison stood up, anger replacing tears with startling speed. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this relationship. I put my career on hold to support yours. I've been networking for months trying to find something that would help us both, and this is how you repay me? With accusations and distrust?" I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. "My career? What career, Madison? I'm working as an accountant by day and a bartender by night just to make ends meet. Ends that you've been deliberately fraying. If you'd gotten that promotion—" "I was turned down for that promotion," I interrupted. "Something I told you multiple times, but you conveniently keep forgetting. And even if I had gotten it, it wouldn't have been enough to cover your secret spending." Madison paced the living room, her tactics shifting again. "You're blowing this out of proportion. So I helped my brother and bought a few things for myself. Is that really worth destroying our marriage over? A few things, Madison? You've taken over $15,000 from our accounts in the past year." She froze. "That's impossible." I pulled out my phone and showed her the spreadsheet I'd created, documenting every unexplained transaction. "It's all there, dates, amounts, what you told me versus what the money was actually spent on." She stared at the screen, then slapped the phone from my hand. It clattered across the hardwood floor. "You're pathetic," she hissed, her mask completely dropped now. "Keeping little records like some kind of accountant. Oh wait, that's right, that's all you'll ever be. A small-time number cruncher too scared to reach for anything more." Her words should have hurt, but instead they clarified everything. This woman wasn't the person I'd fallen in love with. Maybe she never had been. "I want you to pay it back," I said quietly. Madison laughed. "With what money? You think I have $15,000 just sitting around? Then Trevor needs to pay it back. Trevor's business isn't liquid right now. All his assets are tied up in the company." "Of course they were. I'm done, Madison," I said, suddenly exhausted by it all. "This isn't working." Her expression changed again, softening. She approached me slowly, placing her hands on my chest. "Baby, I'm sorry. I should have been honest with you. We can fix this. I'll get a job, a real one, this time. I'll stop helping Trevor, we can start fresh." I looked into her eyes I'd once found so captivating, and saw nothing but calculation. She was already planning her next move, her next manipulation. "I need some air," I said, stepping back from her touch. "Nathan, don't walk away from me. We're not finished talking." But we were. In every way that mattered, we were finished. I spent that night driving aimlessly, eventually parking at a 24-hour diner where I sat until dawn, nursing cold coffee and staring at my reflection in the darkened window. I barely recognized myself. Hollow-cheeked, shadows under my eyes, a perpetual furrow between my brows. When had I become this ghost of a person? And how much of myself was I willing to lose before I said enough? The answer came with the sunrise. I wasn't willing to lose anymore. That morning, I rented a small studio apartment across town, paying the security deposit from my new individual account. I returned to our apartment while Madison was out, packed my essential belongings and left my key on the kitchen counter. No note, no explanation, no more chances for her to twist my words or cloud my judgment. I was done being blamed for fires Madison had secretly started. It was time to save myself. My studio apartment was barely 400 square feet, a shoebox compared to the two-bedroom I'd shared with Madison. The furniture consisted of a futon, a folding table with 2 chairs, and a small TV stand I'd found on clearance. But as I sat on that futon my first night alone, takeout container balanced on my knee, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. No walking on eggshells. No preemptively apologizing. No dreading what new crisis would be blamed on me. Just quiet. My phone had been blowing up with texts and calls from Madison since she'd discovered my absence. I'd read the first few messages. "Where are you? This is childish, Nathan. You can't just leave without talking about this. I'm worried about you. Please call me." "Fine, run away like a coward. This just proves I was right about you all along." Classic Madison, cycling through indignation, concern, and contempt in the span of an hour. I silenced her notifications and focused on my immediate priorities: work, finances, and healing. The first week was the hardest. I kept expecting to hear Madison's key in the door. I'd wake up disoriented, reaching across the bed for someone who wasn't there. But by week 2, I started to feel the fog lifting. I quit the bartending job. Without Madison's secret spending draining our accounts, my accounting salary was enough to cover my modest expenses. For the first time in years, I had evenings to myself, time to think about what I actually wanted, not just what I needed to do to survive. One night, scrolling through job listings out of habit, I noticed a content creator position at a financial advice website. They were looking for someone to write articles explaining complex financial concepts in accessible language. On a whim, I submitted an application, attaching a sample article I'd written during my lunch break. To my surprise, they called me for an interview the next day. The editor, Eliza, was impressed by my finance background, combined with what she called my clear, relatable writing style. Most finance writers know the material but can't explain it to regular people. She said, "You've got both." I landed the gig just freelance at first, writing 2 articles a week in addition to my day job. But those articles sparked something in me. I enjoyed breaking down complex topics, helping people understand money management in practical terms. The comments section filled with readers thanking me for explanations that finally made sense. Meanwhile, I was taking my own financial advice. I opened a separate savings account, setting up automatic transfers each payday. I disputed the fraudulent charges Madison had made on our joint credit cards, providing documentation of her unauthorized spending. I froze our joint accounts, protecting what little remained from further drainage. As I rebuilt my finances, I also began rebuilding myself. I joined a community basketball league that played weekend mornings, something Madison had always discouraged, claiming it took time away from us. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with. I even started seeing a therapist who specialized in recovery from manipulative relationships. "What you experienced has a name," Dr. Landry told me during our 3rd session. "Financial abuse. It's a form of control, just like emotional or physical abuse." The label helped me understand why I'd felt so trapped, so dependent. Madison had systematically undermined my financial security while convincing me I was the problem. Classic gaslighting. 3 months after leaving, I ran into Eliza at a coffee shop near my apartment. What was supposed to be a quick work discussion turned into a 4-hour conversation. She had escaped a toxic marriage herself years earlier, and understood the complex emotions I was still processing. The guilt, the self-doubt, the lingering questions about what I could have done differently. "The hardest part," she said, "is accepting that you couldn't have fixed it. No amount of trying harder would have changed someone determined to take advantage of you." Her words hit home. I'd been carrying that burden. The belief that if I'd just been more successful or more attentive, Madison wouldn't have needed to lie. But that was Madison's narrative, not reality. Eliza became not just my editor but my mentor. Under her guidance, my freelance writing expanded to other publications. I developed a specialty in writing about financial literacy and protection from scams, drawing from my own experiences without explicitly sharing my story. "You have a voice people trust," Eliza told me. "You write like someone who's been in the trenches, not some financial guru who's never struggled." 6 months after leaving Madison, I received a certified letter from a law firm. Trevor's business had collapsed spectacularly amid allegations of fraud and mismanagement. As a major investor, Madison was named in several lawsuits. The letter requested my testimony regarding funds transferred from our joint accounts to Trevor's company without my knowledge or consent. I wasn't surprised, just disappointed. I'd suspected Trevor's business was shady from the fragments I'd pieced together. Now it seemed the house of cards had finally collapsed. That evening, I carefully organized all my financial documentation, bank statements, screenshots of text messages, the spreadsheet tracking Madison's deceptions. I'd been gathering evidence to protect myself, not to seek revenge. But now that evidence might help others who had been deceived. As I scanned the last document, a bank statement showing a $3,000 transfer to Trevor's business account on the same day Madison had claimed our credit card was declined because of my irresponsible spending. My phone lit up with a new email. Eliza had forwarded me a message from her publisher contact. They were interested in discussing a potential book deal, a practical guide to recognizing and recovering from financial abuse, based on my articles. No pressure, Eliza wrote, but your voice is needed. Think about it. I closed my laptop and walked to the window of my small apartment. The city lights sparkled below, each one representing a life. A story, struggles I knew nothing about. 6 months ago, I'd been drowning in blame and debt, working myself to exhaustion to maintain a lie. Now I had possibilities stretching before me, a career using my voice to help others, finances that were slowly healing, and a sense of self that was growing stronger each day. For the first time in years, I was excited about the future. Not just surviving it, but shaping it. On my terms. I was reviewing the final draft of my first book chapter when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Hello? Nathan? It's me. Madison's voice, once so capable of derailing my thoughts, now just sounded small. 9 months had passed since I'd left. 9 months of rebuilding, healing, growing. 9 months of silence between us, broken only by formal communications through lawyers regarding the division of our assets and debts. What do you want, Madison? I kept my voice neutral, even as my heart rate accelerated. I need to see you, her voice cracked. Please. I'm in trouble, Nathan. Of course she was. I'd been following the news about Trevor's company. What had started as allegations of mismanagement had evolved into criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. According to the business section of the local paper, investors had lost millions, and the SEC was investigating. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it despite everything. I didn't wish suffering on Madison, even after what she'd put me through. But I don't see how meeting would help either of us. You don't understand, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. They're saying I knew what Trevor was doing, that I was part of it. They've frozen all my accounts, I can't even pay rent. I had to move back in with my parents, and they're. She trailed off, then continued more quietly. They're not being supportive. I could imagine. Madison's parents had always placed her on a pedestal, their brilliant, beautiful daughter, who could do no wrong. Learning that she'd participated in financial fraud must have shattered that image. I'm sorry, I repeated, but I need to maintain boundaries. Boundaries? Her tone shifted, a flash of the old indignation returning. You abandoned me, Nathan. When things got tough, you just walked out without a word. And there it was, the rewriting of history, the shifting of blame. Some things never changed. Madison, I left because you stole thousands of dollars from our joint accounts, lied about it repeatedly, and blamed me for our financial problems. Problems you created. That's not abandonment, that's self-preservation. I made mistakes, she said, her voice softening again. Terrible mistakes. I see that now, but I need your help. The lawyers are saying that if you testify that I kept you in the dark about Trevor's business, it would help my case. Please, Nathan, I'm facing possible jail time. The manipulation was so transparent now. 9 months ago, it might have worked. I would have rushed to rescue her, to prove I wasn't the failure she'd made me believe I was, but I could see the pattern clearly now, the crisis, the appeal to my protective instincts, the subtle implication that if I didn't help I'd be proving her criticisms right. I'll tell the truth, Madison, nothing more, nothing less. But you know I never understood all that financial stuff, she pressed. That was always your department, if you just say that I was naive about Trevor's business practices. Was it naivety when you told Trevor I was too caught up in my own failures to notice what was happening? Or when you created fake expenses to justify withdrawals? Because that sounds like deliberate deception to me. Silence stretched between us. How did you know about that call with Trevor? She finally asked. I overheard you the day before I left. It was the final confirmation of what I'd already figured out, that you were actively working against me while blaming me for our problems. Another long pause. I'll lose everything, she whispered. I thought about pointing out that she'd already lost everything: her marriage, her parents' unwavering support, her financial security. But what would be the point? Madison always saw herself as the victim, even when she was the architect of her own destruction. I have to go, I said. I wish you well, Madison. I really do. Wait. The desperation in her voice was palpable. I still have some of your things. Photos. That watch from your grandfather. If you help me, I can make sure you get them back. My stomach dropped. The watch was one of the few mementos I had from my grandfather, a self-made man who taught me the value of hard work and integrity. I thought it was lost in the... Are you blackmailing me? Not blackmailing, she said quickly, just reminding you that we still have connections. Things that bind us together. I closed my eyes, gathering my composure. Keep the watch, Madison, it's not worth the price you're asking. I ended the call before she could respond. The next day I received an email from Madison's parents. The first direct communication I'd ever had with them outside of Madison's presence. The subject line read simply, "We know the truth." I opened it with trepidation, half expecting a tirade, defending their daughter. Instead, I found an apology. "We've seen the bank statements," wrote her father. "Madison finally showed us everything under pressure, from her lawyer. We had no idea what she'd been doing to you, Nathan. We believed her stories about you being irresponsible with money. We were wrong, and we're deeply sorry for our part in enabling her behavior." Attached to the email was a photo of a small package they'd mailed to my new address, my grandfather's watch carefully wrapped. "This belongs with you," the email concluded. Madison had no right to keep it or use it as leverage. We raised her better than this, and we've failed as parents if she thinks this behavior is acceptable. We're trying to help her face the consequences of her actions rather than run from them. It's the only way she'll ever grow. I sat back in my chair, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. Vindication, yes, but also sadness. Sadness for the young woman I'd fallen in love with years ago, whose bright future had derailed through a series of increasingly destructive choices. Sadness for her parents, facing the painful reality of who their daughter had become. 2 days later, a local news alert popped up on my phone. Former marketing executive charged in connection with tech startup fraud scheme. There was Madison's professional headshot, alongside Trevor's. The article detailed how she'd allegedly helped funnel investor money through multiple accounts to disguise its true destination. The empire of lies she'd built was crumbling spectacularly, exposing everyone who'd been caught in its foundation, including herself. That evening, Eliza called to check on me. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" I looked around my apartment, no longer just a refuge, but a home. Books lined the shelves, a half-finished manuscript sat on my desk. The walls displayed framed covers of magazines that had published my articles. "Yeah," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. "I really am." "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Nathan Caldwell." The applause caught me off guard as I approached the podium. 2 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this moment, standing before a room full of financial advisors and counselors as a keynote speaker. My book Breaking Free: Recognizing and Recovering from Financial Abuse had become an unexpected success, climbing bestseller lists and opening doors I never knew existed. "Thank you," I said, adjusting the microphone. "I'm not here today because I have all the answers. I'm here because I made nearly every mistake possible before finding my way out." Laughter rippled through the audience. It was easier to talk about it now. The years I'd spent believing I was failing someone who was actively undermining me. The way I'd internalized blame that wasn't mine to carry. "Financial abuse thrives in secrecy and shame," I continued. "The victims often don't even recognize what's happening until they're drowning in consequences they didn't create." As I spoke, I scanned the crowd. Eliza sat in the front row, giving me an encouraging nod. Beside her was David, my lawyer who'd helped me navigate the aftermath of Madison's crimes, and beyond them rows of professionals who worked with people like my former self. People trapped in cycles of blame and financial manipulation. The most insidious part is how it erodes your trust, not just in others but in yourself, in your own perceptions, your own worth. My story had become a tool, a way to illuminate patterns others might be experiencing, but couldn't yet name. Each speaking engagement, each workshop, each reader email affirmed that the pain I'd endured could serve a purpose beyond my own healing. After the presentation, during the reception, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Your book saved my life," she said simply. I was about to go back to him, for the third time, but then I read your chapter, about the cycle of financial manipulation, and it was like reading about myself. These conversations still humbled me. Reminders that suffering, when transformed into wisdom, could create ripples of change extending far beyond my own experience. Later that evening, I returned to my apartment, no longer the sparse studio, but a comfortable one-bedroom with a small office, where I did most of my writing. My grandfather's watch sat on my desk, restored and running perfectly. Beside it was a framed photo from the launch party of my second book, showing me surrounded by the support system I'd built. Eliza, now my close friend and professional collaborator. My basketball teammates, who'd become like brothers. Landry, who'd guided me through the darkest days of recovery. My phone chimed with a news alert. I rarely sought updates about Madison anymore, but occasionally they found me anyway. Former marketing executive Madison Reynolds sentenced in tech fraud case. I hesitated before opening the article. Madison's trial had concluded with a guilty verdict months ago, but sentencing had been delayed multiple times. According to the headline, she'd received 3 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. I closed the alert without reading further. Whatever journey Madison was on now belonged to her alone. I hoped she would find her way to honesty and healing, but her path was no longer entwined with mine. My agency, now employing 4 full-time writers besides myself, had more work than we could handle. We specialized in creating financial education content for nonprofits, credit unions and advocacy groups. The irony wasn't lost on me that the crisis that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately led to my most fulfilling work. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my dinner date. Christine, a financial counselor I'd met at a conference 6 months earlier. Our relationship was still new, evolving carefully as we both carried lessons from past wounds. But there was a refreshing honesty between us. A transparency about money and expectations that felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. "How was your presentation?" she asked, as we walked to the restaurant around the corner. "Good," I said. "Scary still, but good. You were right about sharing the spreadsheet example. People really connected with that." "Told you," she grinned. Concrete examples always hit harder than generalizations. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing. Her difficult client, my upcoming deadline, the documentary we'd both been wanting to see. No eggshells to navigate, no hidden agendas, just the simple pleasure of sharing space with someone who saw me clearly and valued what they saw. Later that night, after Christine had gone home, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "So proud of you, sweetheart. Dad and I just booked our flights for Thanksgiving." Another relationship healed. In the depths of my marriage to Madison, I'd withdrawn from my family, embarrassed by my deteriorating finances and confidence. Reconnecting with them had been another crucial step in reclaiming myself. I thought about the journey of the past 2 years, from the night I'd stared at my hollow reflection in the kitchen window, to today's keynote address, from financial chaos to stability, from isolation to community, from self-doubt to purpose. The path hadn't been linear. There had been setbacks, doubts, days when the old patterns of thinking tried to reassert themselves. Recovery wasn't a destination but a practice, one I recommitted to daily. My second book had ended with words that had become something of a personal mantra. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of truth. It's not found in escape but in facing reality with clear eyes and an open heart. That peace, hard-won and fiercely protected, surrounded me now. Not because life was perfect or because I'd never face challenges again, but because I'd learned to stand in my truth without apology or hesitation. The man who had packed his bags in the middle of the night, too beaten down to even leave a note, would hardly recognize me now. But that was the point of the journey, wasn't it? To become someone new, someone stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than I'd ever been allowed to be in the shadow of blame. I'd fought for this peace, earned it, and now I was determined to help others find their way to it too. Because the most powerful response to those who try to diminish you isn't revenge, it's thriving.